The Vinny D Show.
All right, so I'm here with a good friend of mine, Karl Jackson. We've known each other for about 7-8 years now, worked together for a little while. Karl is the owner of Black Beard Brigade, company that he spun off a couple years ago. He's a tech guru in my mind because he knows how everything works behind the scenes, which I'm lucky I can start my computer sometimes. Former athlete, very involved with youth, both on the athletic side and the academic and scholastic side. So Karl, welcome in.
Hey, appreciate you having me on, man.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess let's kind of, I want to start, first off with your business. I'm always intrigued and interested in people that have multiple full-time jobs, right? I love that, the grind never stops. So how did you start? I guess what was the initial driver to say I want to start my own company, and then how did that kind of drive into the route you took?
So really, the start my own company conversation really started after I moved to Houston a few years ago, right? It was in those conversations that we used to have at happy hour with some of those the VP of sales, all VP engineering that we had, and it came down from they had a conversation about like equity in companies, right? And it was more so of we never have that conversation of having equity in companies. It's always if you make this salary, then you'll be, you know what I'm saying, you'll be this. You make 6 figures and this is how you know you made it. And so that's how we always came up. Like that's always the conversation, right? So being around there, the conversation came up one day was kind of like, like your salary's probably higher than mine, but he has a higher position, right? And it's kind of like, oh man, like how does that work? And it's kind of like, I got equity, I get equity to go into companies and help turn companies around, and then boost up from there, and I get paid out millions, and then I go on to the next one. But then I'm like, man, that's crazy. Like, but I make more, but yet my salary is more than yours, but yet you still make more money than me. Like, this makes no sense. So then, you know what I'm saying? It actually, like that weekend, really, I started this other journey where I started, like, I researched a bunch of other like small companies. I was like, man, how can I get equity in a company without working for that company? In my mind, and what I was telling people at the time, I was like, man, if I own 10%, like 10% of like 10 companies, it's like a whole company. I ain't gotta do nothing. It's like, I don't think that's how it works. I'm like, shoot, watch me. So at that point, it was kind of like, I went through and I actually researched a bunch of, like, there was a list that happened to come out around that same time. I remember it was like August, like 2015. And it was this list that came out, and it had all these like startup companies that were coming out and what they were doing for their employees and stuff like that. So I started digging. I'm like, man. So then it came down to the point, well, you had to be an accredited investor to like invest in companies to kind of have equity if you weren't working for them. And I'm like, then you had these other stipulations, right? You have to have like a salary of like 200K, or you have to have assets in like the millions to actually do this. So basically, it was something that was only for certain groups of people, and it filtered out everybody else. And then so I was still looking around. I'm like, man, this doesn't even make sense. There has to be a way to get into this. And at the same time, I read this book called Powernomics by Dr. Claude Anderson. And in the book, it also talked about, just owning your own businesses, owning everything from like the top down. So say if you're in manufacturing and you get in on the selling point, eventually owning a part of manufacturing the products that you sell, at the same time own the sales team at the top and everything in between, are having that tiered approach where you have other people that you work with that from the top down, you kind of work through that level. So at the same time, I'm reading that, and then President Obama had passed that Jobs Act, which actually allowed to equity crowdfunding at the same time too.
Right.
And so I started looking into some of those businesses, and there weren't a lot of businesses that was actually doing it at the time. So I started looking into those. It wasn't a lot of information at the time. Everything was like private equity firms, angel investors. So it's kind of like piecemealing that information and kind of making it, see how it can fit into the new jobs that came out, because there weren't any YouTube videos. Like, it was new. Like, a lot of people weren't looking into it. And so I started looking into that part, but I was like, I still need to have my own type of situation, my own business. And at the same time, around say I was growing the beard out, and I was having these other issues where I couldn't find products that actually work for me, right? And so I started digging around. I had a homeboy that was on the same journey, and so we would exchange, like, oh man, try this product. And there was times where you come out itchy, dry, and trying to go out down that route and trying to figure out how can I get past this issue. It was just flaking these things. I went on a journey of like using lotion and using the regular hair cream and things like that didn't work. So it just ended up going down that route of just research and being like, I need to come up with something for myself. And then it just ended up being something that spun out and getting sold to lots of people at this point, just from having that own journey and understanding the same issue that other people went through and having something that actually worked for me and people love it type situation.
Right. I love the spiral effect, right? It starts with a conversation, then it goes into how can I get involved, and then it kind of filters into your own company. Now, you are someone that's always kind of had your hands in a number of projects, whether they were, at your current job, if they were consulting style, if they were, your own business. How do you, I guess starting from the beginning there, how did that thought process or that mindset start from you, right? Because there's a lot of people that have a difficult time staying on a single task, whereas trying to juggle multiple tasks, for some, they thrive in it, for some, they don't. So where did that really start for you in getting involved with that?
Hungry, man. There was a time where I actually did. Yeah. And for me, it's like, I'm going to eat and I feel like just enough for everybody to eat. Right. So it was a time when I first got out of college and I was working, a couple of little jobs, whatever, but it was actually just intermediate time, right? I had just came out, I played football, so I was working on actually still trying to play, and at the time, I was working at a school, I was working at a HP, I was actually building websites on the side at the time, and I was always on the go. And then there was a time, and at the same time, people that lived up there when I was in Indianapolis, they were like, "Yo, like you are never in town. Every other weekend, it seems like you're gone. Like it's crazy." And I'm like, "Yeah, man, I'm straight moving." And then it was just something that came easy, but at the same time, like everything got put into perspective. I got in this car accident, so I got in a car accident that kind of ended any thoughts of me playing football anymore. It made me slow down and actually like view things from another point where like you have to. Time became more valuable to me at that point, right? It's kind of like, you can't waste your time on frivolous things. Like I'm already laid back, so it actually made me more laid back in the way I approach certain things, and I'm already analytical, so I kind of like analyze different situations, figure out the best way to approach those. And at the same time, it's funny because people are like, yeah, you always seem busy, you always doing this and this, but low key, I'm kind of lazy, right? So like I will spend 20 minutes researching how somebody else are looking for a template to something, right? And then put 5 minutes work into it as opposed to just recreating the thing in 30 minutes. Like I saved 5 minutes, I'm good. So and I can reuse that same thing. So like I go through and I don't recreate a lot of different things. It's more so of let me find it has to be somebody else at some point thought about this, right?
Right.
Somebody else at some point had some approach to this, whether it was failed or whether it went all the way through or not, there was some starting point. And so I always look for like those starting points to kind of find that entry into certain aspects and kind of pick up from there and try to push things forward and tailor it to my needs, my advantage, and for those who I'm working with, and kind of move it from there.
Yeah, and I think, kind of going back to a little bit of your background being an athlete, I think there's something to that because you weren't just a football player, right? You were in sports pretty much. I know more about you than everyone else here probably does, but you were in sports kind of the whole year, your whole life. I think there's something to that about athletes, or not just athletes, right? It could be any activity that you're doing, extracurricular. I think it creates the idea of a constant schedule. The workday may end at 5 o'clock, just like our school day used to end at 3 o'clock. But then we had 2 hours of practice and film, or we had, 4 hours in the wrestling room, or you had, to do something on your own, right? You kind of continuous. And I think that is a nice correlation to a lot of successful people as they grow older, is they're used to filling their time with things that are productive or at least semi-productive, right? Like they're better than the alternatives. But, someone like that, you've also spent a lot of time, helping to develop children. In both the athletic community and scholastically. So I want to kind of start with the athletic side of it. I think a lot of us as athletes always feel the want or the need to give back. And usually that's a result of the coaching that we had. We kind of see that mentality from the coaches that we had, and then we want to give back. But what kind of drove you to, setting up your own training, setting up your own coaching? How did that kind of start?
And I'm gonna touch on something real quick though. So the other drive to that was like once I get into something, I don't like quitting, right? So and I think that's the other reason why I end up like, all right, like I'll start digging into something and I feel excited about it, I'll run with it. So somebody will bring up an idea like, yeah, let's do this. And I'm like, oh, that sounds like a good idea. And then I'll look into it, and then I'll come back within like 12 to 24 hours, like, man, we can do this, and everybody's like, well, like, all right. So then I end up leaving people behind because people are like, yo, I wasn't really ready for that. But I'm like, hey, like, you got me excited. And that's kind of how that business got started. It was kind of, I had a partner at the time. He got me excited. And I'm like, yo, oh, man, okay, yeah, let's do this. We can do this and make these moves, And he couldn't keep up. And so it just, you know what I'm saying? And it ended up just being me in the long run for a while. But as far as like the kids aspect, it was kind of growing up, man. It's usually, when I think about certain things that I do now, it's usually probably like 3 points in life where I can attribute to that too. It was like one incident that happened 3 different times where I can be like, oh, okay. And then that kind of made me change my mindset, change how I did things. So like with the kids, it was more so of, especially when I was coming out of high school, the lack of knowledge that we had as far as, okay, like these are the people that actually can help you figure out the best college for you, especially as an athlete, right? Everybody's like, oh, I had a coach that was like, oh, he wanted me to go to Nebraska because he went there. He wasn't pushing for anything else. He wasn't bringing nothing else, saying that was my senior year. And I'm like, yo, this is weird. It's bringing that knowledge because for me, I feel like it's easier to teach kids than to repair broken men, right? And that goes down to because grown people have these mindsets. They're already set in their ways a lot of the times. And even if you're trying to tell them something to their best benefit, it's kind of like leading a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. They don't always, they're like, well, because you told me this, I'm just not going to do it. And I understand it. I mean, a lot of the stuff that I've done and a lot of reasons why I went about the way I did was because I didn't want to be like other people. So, working with the kids and seeing like the gaps in either the education that they're getting, the gaps in their knowledge in sports, like for sports for me, we used to have to do the power cleans and other certain lifting things. And because you didn't explain it to me and tell me why I need to do this, I would skip some of those workouts. I was like, I'm not benefiting from this. Like, I feel like I'm getting the same workout from doing this other thing. So I would skip it. It wasn't until I was actually learning how to train kids and I was like, oh, so that's the benefit of this. This is why you have me running backwards. I'm not a DB. Why am I running backwards in practice? This is dumb. You know what I'm saying? But at the same time, DBs don't pull their hamstrings as much because they work your hamstrings at the same time. So it's just things like that. So, it comes from a thing where a lot of households you're taught, don't ask me this. This is grown for me. Don't ask me these questions. Just do what I say, right? And for me, it's kind of like, that doesn't really work. If I don't understand, if I have questions, then I'm not going to really, I'm going to half-ass whatever you're saying because it doesn't make sense to me, right? So it goes down there. So the earlier that you actually train kids, hey, ask these questions. Don't accept things at face value. Dig into it and understand why you're doing certain things and why things work. From a sports level, from an education level, to me, it all kind of intertwines. And it helps them see, hey, you don't only have this option as an athlete, you have this option in sports as well.
Right. I think it's important to help kids to ask the right questions, right? And I think there's also an important balance of asking kids, yes, question what's going on, but don't question it for the fact of questioning it, right? Don't question it just because you want to be, right? You don't want to be the kid that follows the leader, right? But question it, find out why, and then once you get the why, go hard at it, right? And I think, to me, that's one of the biggest issues with our education system in general is a lot of the information that we learned in school, right, was, I would say roughly half of it's probably useless. Like, I've never had a single question in my adulthood come up about the War of 1812. Not one time, right? I mean, I hated history as it was, but things that could have helped me were personal finance, right? Understanding credit.
Exactly.
Things like this could have helped. And I see you do that with a lot of kids. And I know at the company we worked at together, you set up an internship program. And we're bringing kids in because you're in class, you're learning what's in class, but how do I take that into my next life? How do I make that a career? Right. There's not a lot of careers around trigonometry, but there's a lot of careers around computer science, right? But even that, we learned it at such a mediocre level in school. And that's what is interesting about what you do with kids now.
And the thing that would actually, and so I work with some STEM programs, and the thing that actually would make it more intriguing for kids to actually join those programs, all right, yeah, I need to take trigonometry, I need to take calculus. Tell me how that applies to everyday life, right?
Sure.
Oh, okay, yeah, I have an interest in building rockets. Oh, so this is how this is used there. Boom, okay, I'm interested, right? So, I like cars. Okay, you like cars. Well, look, if you learn this is how this works. This is how this relates to mechanics and cars. makes a whole lot more sense to me now.
Yep.
Instead of just saying, oh yeah, you need this. Why do I need this? Like, how does this benefit me? I don't see anybody in my life using this, right? I don't see anybody that's like me using this in any type of thing. I don't even see this on TV at the time. So how does this actually benefit me long term? And why do I need to learn this? Math was actually the subject that I hated most in school. It was because like the whole like, hey, I gotta show your work. Like I have the answer. Why do I need to do all this extra stuff to show my answer? Like this is stupid to me. Like so, I half the time I just wouldn't do it. And it was just, I mean, it was just kind of I didn't have the right teachers that would explain it. It's like, okay, this is how this been. This is why we need to do this instead of show your work because I said so. To me, that never flew. Like I couldn't get down like that. And I don't know, maybe I was hard headed too, but.
Yeah, well, I was very fortunate. So I brought up trigonometry as a joke. That actually was my favorite subject in high school. And I was very lucky though. I had a teacher, and I hope I don't butcher his name. I think his name is Mr. Torado. And I remember his class was the most structured class I've probably ever been in my life, all the way through college. It was, you learned a formula on Monday, you drilled it Tuesday and Wednesday. Thursday, he gave you examples. Friday, you had a quiz. And that was every single week. So it actually molded a lot of the things I've done and a lot of other things in my life. Is kind of be quiet up front, right? When I'm learning something, be quiet. The next time, now start to drill it. That's when you ask all your questions, and then you start to practice it, right? Like that's kind of how I've taken a lot of those mentalities of me. But it is true. We get stuck in a system where kids feel like they can't. I mean, the thought even, it always bothers me, the thought that kids have to raise their hand and ask if they can use the bathroom. Like we've created a society in schools where it's a very, for lack of a better term, it's a master subservient thought process, right? It's not an equivalent. And we have some children that never really break that mold. They never know, okay, well, now I get to college and the professor says, well, just call me Vinny. Well, I've never called a teacher anything other than Mr. and Mrs. their name, right? Like ever. So I don't know how to interact with an adult on that level because I've never been treated with the same respect that I'm supposed to give. And I think that is a big, there's an issue with the dichotomy of education in that realm. Too many people, in a lot of aspects, not just education, too many people are stuck on the power of I'm in control, now listen, versus I'm here to get you to the next level. And that I think really needs to be corrected.
And I went to a school one time. We had a vice principal that was on a power trip. So I'm the middle of three boys. So my older brother, for other reasons, me and my older brother were actually a grade apart, but he's actually 3 years older than me, right? So we were always in school around the same time. But we had this thing where students and faculty alike, either you loved us or you hated us for whatever reason. It was a love-hate relationship, right? Well, we had cornrows, we had the whole, the long hair, everything, right? Sometimes throw out. So for whatever reason, she didn't like us, and it turned out she was more on the racist side, right? So whenever she wanted to talk to students, she would want to be this close to your face and talk to you. So personal space, we would back up, like, yo, like, all right, and she would get offended. I'm like, yeah, but you're in my personal space. Like, you don't need to be this close to my face talking to me, right? So that went on for a while. She had issues with several students, and then one time she made me call my dad in the middle of the day she made a derogatory comment towards me. And then I made a comment back to her, a smart comment. And then she made me call my dad and tell my dad what I said, blah, blah, blah. And so like we got into this whole thing to the point where at one point, if my brother and I ever got in trouble, she was never allowed to discipline us. We had to go to either the other vice principal or the principal. Like she was never allowed to talk to us at that point going forward. It was just like a ridiculous thing where you have these people who get into these systems for whatever reason decide to use that as a position of power to kind of bully people and to be subservient, right? And to do, hey, you need to do this because I'm the authority here. Like that doesn't work. And you get that with the wrong people, you're going to have that pushback. You're going to have those breaking points to where people eventually push back and say, hey, I'm going to buck the system because I'm not going to deal with this. And you see a lot of that today with a lot of stuff that's going on, right? You have the system where we're dealing with the law and the government, and people are like, yeah, the system's broken. The system isn't broken. It was designed this way, right? So when people are like, yeah, burn it down, in a sense, you have to burn the system down to rebuild it because it was designed to be this way. If you read Black Labor, White Wealth, if you read when affirmative action was white, you actually get the breakdown of when these systems were put in place. You understand, hey, this is why they designed it this way, because this law was passed, but to counteract this law, because we're giving them freedom, let's put this in place, because now we can kind of break it back down and say, but if you do this, now this is actually going to make you make everything you do illegal, or give us justification to mess with you because we're putting this in place. And it's a it's a system that's entirely flawed. But everybody's like, hey, because our forefathers, our forefathers your forefathers were racist. Your forefathers built a system to keep people down. Those are not my forefathers, right? I mean, how can I can't relate to them at all. They have done nothing to help me move forward.
Well, and that's a big thing to dive into. So I want to definitely dive into that more. I question, I guess, where, like, taking the justice system aside of it, I want to get into that in a second, but taking it on the educational side, because that's where most kids are spending so much of their time. I think we've made such a cardinal mistake with this top-down approach to everything, that you even get it now on both sides, when a politician, whether you like or don't like their politics, will say, for instance, wear a mask or don't wear a mask, or whatever one. Doesn't really matter what side. You're getting people that are on both sides of the same issue just disagreeing just to disagree. Like, there can be a politician saying, hey, wear a mask, it's for your safety. You're not going to tell me what to do. Or you get a politician saying, don't wear a mask. Studies are coming out that they don't actually have an effect. And you'll have someone saying, you don't know science more than I do. And it's just, we've now, and my good show host there a couple of weeks ago, Mike Jackson, talked about kind of how pendulums swing, right? When things happen, we get to one side of it, and I think we're on that overcorrecting. But to kind of make a hard right turn into the justice system, it's incredibly flawed. And it's one of those things that we look at. There are so many laws that are created to protect other laws, right? Or to protect those that influence the law. And I think we've gotten so far away from, a law was supposed to be that to keep order in society that was a net benefit for everyone, right? If you go murder someone, you get arrested. That's a net benefit for all of us, that person is off the street. But we have so many loopholes and technicalities that will keep, and just to be completely honest, if I commit the same crime that you commit, there are going to be probably different bail numbers that are going to be set. There are going to be different approaches. There's going to be different conversations even from the judge to me versus you. Right. And those are just the things in our system. I don't have a perfect answer on how we weed that out. I think it's almost the kind that, I guess the thing is, I don't see an issue with adding more regulatory bodies to every system, right? Police regulatory bodies, judicial regulatory bodies, even lawyers, right? Like, lawyers all the time. And I know we see it a lot in shows, so I can't speak to the validity of it, but that there are lawyers that are constantly stretching the line or crossing the line. And when the other attorney finds out about it, it's one of those things like, well, I won't report you to the bar if you let it go on this case. Like, we're not helping anyone on that, right? And that's, it's like we still have so many backroom deals and handshake deals that are going on. I don't have a perfect answer on that. I guess I feel like we should get rid of anything that has a term in perpetuity, right? No one should have a position in perpetuity. None of us do, right? Except for maybe being a parent. Right, like that's like, or a child, right? Like those are the only things. Or being a human, right? Those are the things we get to do in perpetuity. And I guess we just need to continuously educate people on situations that are going on. Like when the George Floyd incident happened, right? It didn't shock, I don't think, a large number of the community members in the United States that this kind of behavior happens. Right? It wasn't a shock to them, but it was a legitimate shock to a large number of people. And I understand the side of, we can't hold them accountable if they didn't know these things happen, but we can hold ourselves accountable that they didn't know these things happen. And that, I think, is one of the things we need to get better at. I know it's something you and I talk about a lot. But I guess, if waving the magic wand, if Karl Jackson was in charge, tomorrow, I mean, how would you kind of, even just start from the judicial side of things, how would you start to try to make it an even playing field?
So one of the other reasons why I do stuff with the youth is because, like, basically you give them options, right? So one of the programs I work with, our Freedom Readers, is all about creating that literacy in an area where it used to be a heavily paper mill type area. So you either go work in the mill, you sell drugs, or you work in like these other minimum wage jobs, and there's no other way out. But increasing that literacy, and increasing the awareness of more of the outside world, outside of that city that you're in, and understanding that, right? And it starts with the education factor. Like, I know teachers do as much as they can in the schools, but they can't teach everything. Sometimes you have these books that leave out a lot of information, or they're not actually given the relevant information for students to progress in certain areas, or they get these hand-me-down books with information missing, right? So it's kind of trying to fill that gap. So that's one of the reasons why I start from that level, because as you grow older, you understand, like your thought process is a little bit different. Like I can analyze situations a little bit more. I can understand, okay, well, this is the situation that's going on. I'm more aware of the issues that are going on at the same time. And then you go on that level. From a adult judicial level, I think a lot of that actually starts with dealing with how the police and the prosecutors deal with some of these cases, right? It's kind of like, you find now, because of social media, because people are video recording everything, it's we have them on tape where they're planting evidence. Well, this has been going on for a long time, right? Where and then they have like the lawyers and the police have immunity against, getting persecuted for doing things. They have protection from the unions, or this lawyer messed up. Well, we just sweep it under the rug. Nobody's exposing it, so it keeps going on. You've had cases within the last year or two where you had somebody, I think they were like changing like the DNA, like changing evidence, and it was like it affected like 50 to 100 cases or something like that. And it was some county in Florida. And you
surprise me it's from Florida.
yeah, that's a whole nother conversation. But you have you have groups of these in different cities, in different states, where they can get away with this because they can. Nobody's pushing forward, right? So it's kind of like changing the laws around, especially how you can deal with them, because it's a numbers game for them, right? I got X amount of arrests. We getting this money now. You know what I'm saying? This boosts our department. Like, we close these cases. Yeah, but these cases weren't legit in some senses, right? Or, you get the prosecutors, the aggressive prosecutors. I want to be a DA. I want to move up. I want to be a judge. And so now you have to have these numbers behind you to support. So when I'm running, I did this, this, and this. But was that legit? Are those legit numbers, right? So you get that. Like, so I had an incident. Like I said, it's always like 3 incidents that kind of shape things that I do, right? One incident was, so, you get harassed by the police. So I've been harassed by the police one time, where I was coming from a club. I had dropped some people off. I had stopped drinking hours before then. It's like 3, 4 in the morning. I'm working a side job. I got to be there at like 6:37, so I'm about to go home, rest, and go, whatever. So I get pulled over for not using the left turn signal in the left turn lane. And I lived on the borderline of like this uppity neighborhood. So I had been there for probably about a couple months. I get pulled over on the side of the road. I had a weapon in the car. I let them know, and it's kind of cold out. So I'm sitting there with my hands like this. My window's down. It's freezing. So at this point, I'm like shaking because I don't want to put my hands down to like roll the window up. So I'm freezing, right? So by the time he comes back, there's like 7 other officers there. And at this point, I'm like, I don't have nothing. I just want to go home, get some rest. It's like 4 in the morning at this point. So they was like, can we search your car? Now I know that, hey, you can't search my car, you know what I'm saying, without cause, whatever. But I'm like, you know what? Let's just get this over real quick. Go ahead and do it, right? But at that point, they could have planted something in the car. But what they did do was, they looked through the trunk, did all this stuff. They had me pulled over so long that my car battery died. They had to call another person to give me a jump, right? What they normally do in those situations with people who look like me, or who suspect do things, they will try to confiscate things from your vehicle at that point. So they accidentally took the magazine to my gun. And I get home and I'm looking and I'm like, where's my stuff at? So I'm like, my stuff is legit these days. So so I called dispatch. I said, I think you guys accidentally, took this. I didn't want to accuse them. You know what I'm saying? So I'm choosing my words. Like, you guys, so long story short, I got my stuff back. Right. And then there was another incident, a couple years before that, when I was in college, I was home for the summer. There used to be these basketball tournaments, and they had in this one neighborhood. I was there with a bunch of guys that I hung out with here and there. Somebody, we were at a hotel. Somebody somewhere fired off some shots. Some other cat was like, "Ah, man, all right." So he goes to his car and he comes back in, and then he pulls a sawed-off shotgun out of his pants leg, and I'm like, "Oh, so this is what we doing right now?" Like, okay. So my retarded tail, I'm like, "All right, yeah, I probably should leave." But at the same time, I'm like, you know what? I'm waiting on this girl to come back from the store or whatever. I'm on some bull, right? So I'm like, yeah, I'm like one of my eggs. I'm waiting to talk to her when she come back. So they were like, yeah. So the hotel people like, yeah, he needs to stop going in and out these rooms. I'm like, all right, cool. Everybody's staying put. And then they come knock at the door. Woo, woo, woo. You guys need to leave. If you guys don't leave, you're gonna get arrested. Knowing me, so one of the dudes went to the bathroom. I know what's going on. Like the shotgun is illegal. Well, all right, cool. I'm out of there. So I'm in college. So I got my football scholarship and everything. I am the first one that walks out the door, and I knew somebody had a room upstairs. So I walked out the door, walked around the corner. As soon as I get around the corner, get on the ground now. Gun on me, and I'm like, what did I do? I'm like, oh, why'd you try to run? You told me to leave. Like, you just told us to leave this hotel, right? And now you're saying that now you're trying to arrest me for resisting law enforcement. All right, cool. So now, what I'm saying, I get locked up for that. So I ended up having so normally, you deal with these cases, these bail cases, right? So if you can't pay bail, you're stuck in there for petty charges, some things, whatever. So a lot of people these days are in there for that same situation. Luckily, I was able to actually get out that night. So now you had a situation where I'm actually working a part-time job that summer, and I'm actually supposed to be at work like that morning at 8:00. So now my dad has to come get me out. I go home. I probably get home at like 6. Take a shower, get dressed, and go to work so I don't get fired, right? So it's just like you deal with situations like that. And at the same while he was driving me to the thing, he realizes who I am and says, "Oh yeah, you probably gonna lose your football scholarship after this, huh?" And starts laughing. And I'm just like, "This is a game to you? Like, this makes no sense." Like, so they play this numbers. They treat you like a number in the system, and as a scorecard, like, boom, I got one. And now I'm gonna get extra points because this is an athlete that's in college, whatever. And I'm like, yo, this is crazy. So we have to look at that the way we allow them to make these arrests, prosecute, and hold them to a different standard to say, hey, all right, well, you did this, you knew that you were falsifying whatever. And now you can be held accountable instead of saying you can't be held accountable for anything that you're doing. Like, it makes no sense. We have accountability everywhere else, but on the people who actually literally hold our lives hold our lives in their hands.
Yeah, I mean, I think it starts. First of all, I think anyone that's against or holds a precedent against body cams and all that kind of stuff is the wrong thing, right? That's for their safety and for ours, right? Nothing, no quicker way than to exonerate you as a law enforcement officer about feeling fearful for your life than a video of someone coming at you with a weapon, right? Boom, right. It's done. It's over. But it also holds them accountable. But I feel like I don't know I feel like we need to take approach from bottom up and top down. But the idea of a prison, right? The idea of jail was they were touted as rehabilitation centers, right? The idea was to rehabilitate those to become active members of society again. And that got lost a very, very long time ago with a for-profit system. But even just like you mentioned with bail, I got to listen to that podcast about the Innocence Project. And when you talk about bail being a for-profit system, was another thing that was mind-boggling to me, because I thought bail was what it was. I thought it was the same thing, right? You can either post a cash bond yourself, and when you go to court, you get it back, or you can pay a bail bondsman 10% and never get it back. But the actual origination of bail was a bill after the fact. It was a letter to say, if you don't show up for court, you're going to be billed $500 or $1,000 or whatever that number is. And that's not the case, right? And I guarantee you, not knowing the situation, not being there in that situation, I guarantee you they looked at you as an African-American college kid and they put a bail on you, probably thinking you couldn't pay it. And this is a way for me to keep you in for a couple days, and then whatever, we'll release them because there's nothing going on after a couple days. Well, haha, you got out. But right. There's such a, I feel like from the top down, we need to start approaching the judicial system as a rehabilitation center? How can we get people in a situation where they are not repeat offenders, right? First, it starts with, I think, decriminalizing nonviolent, drug charges. My personal opinion. Some people have a different opinion on drugs, and I completely understand that. I just disagree with you. So I just think those shouldn't be touted. But then I also think that we need to do more, and I think this is like with a lot of situations, we need to do more post, right? We need to set up more programs for those that they got picked up for, say, possession, right? You don't necessarily know if it's theirs. They could have been holding it for somebody. They could just be, an idiot, right? They made a mistake, or they could be a guy that grabbed a bag of weed because that's what he does, right? He's not a detriment to society. Well, then we need to do better in getting these people back into working, right? Getting them back to be positive influences on society, because it just like I do. Most of the jobs that you and I have had, if you have a felony on your record, you can't even get in the door. It doesn't matter how qualified you are, how good you are. Now, and again, I don't always have the perfect answers for these things, but we just need to re-look at a lot of these things by saying, okay, can we downgrade some of these convictions to say that they're not felonies, right? It's possession. Maybe that goes into another category, or just these nonviolent things that people can still be positive to society. You tell me an 18-year-old kid that has a backpack full of weed, that him and his friends are about to just go have a fun weekend, that kid's life can never be the same again if he's convicted of a felony possession charge, like forever, right? He's either got to become a millionaire on his own in some other platform, or he's going to be someone that comes right back and commits now probably more violent crimes, because now he has a hatred toward the community. He has a different outlook on people, and no one in any of those situations stood up for him.
Well, between that and the fact that now you got to eat, you still got to eat. So now you caught this petty charge, right? And a lot of times, like I said, these petty charges are minor things where you shouldn't have to pay thousands in bail just to get out to do it, because now that you're sitting there, you can't make bail. If you have a job, you might lose that job at this point, right? And it's only because you didn't show up. You're a no call, no show at this point. So now you really can't explain it. So when you do get out, it's kind of like, how do I explain to them that I went to jail because of this? Especially if your job is one at drug test. Like for me, I haven't been drug tested in years, working for different jobs. Like the last time it was I was working in a retail job. That's it, right? So it was kind of like the minimum wage jobs are really the only ones that usually only drug test people anyway. And usually those are the only jobs that you can get once you have certain issues, or once you're trying to reacclimate to society after you actually post bail or do months or whatever, couple years or whatever time, whatever. And it's a whole reacclimation period that you have to deal with. Things change, right? You go in there for a year, 2 years, with technology, the way the world works, everything's going to change in that time you're doing it. So now you have to readjust. There's no, there are very few systems or programs that are actually designed to help make sure that you can reacclimate to society after that. Now you have this whole thing about repeat offenders, because the system's really designed to ensure that you come back in there to make more profit for them, because now if you're out on the street, they're losing out on money from that point.
And see, that is what I feel like the statistics we should be judging our DAs by, right? Is you as a district attorney, right? You are in charge of this district and how those people are going to be prosecuted. Your record should be on those that are put in the system, rehabilitated, and are not put back in, because then you, to me, are a positive for us, right? You, X number of DA, you're someone that shows me you understand that the majority of these people that are being arrested, especially on these minor offenses, have some sort of problem. It's either an addiction, it's either a mental illness. Like those are the majority of them, right? That are on these petty charges. And that's the thing is, if we focused on rehabilitating them while they're in, if someone has alcoholism and they have to do, say, they got into a drunken disorderly, right? They got into a fight. They're going to do 3 months in a county lockup, right? And then they're going to get out. If we spent those 3 months treating it like an AA program, they're still locked up. But instead of just during the day, them sitting in their cell doing push-ups, or them worried about getting beat up or whatever else happens in prison. If we treated it like an AA program, where, okay, we got 3 months. You can only get timed out if you complete this process. I guarantee you we'll start to see more and more people getting on the right track as they get out, right? Parole officers, right? They're the most overworked people probably in this country. We can't as a society say, we're going to have 10 people involved in putting this person in prison, and we're going to have one single guy involved of 10,000 people when they get out to make sure they're staying on the straight and narrow. That's too late at that point.
And then when you have some of them overworked POs, like they don't have the energy to really help out. So then some of them actually have attitudes when dealing with you because of other things going on. And it's a system for them that they actually need to have counselors on deck to deal with them, so they can actually deal, because they're actually dealing with all these troubled people. They need somebody to upload data. So they don't have anybody to upload it on. So they upload on to the people that they're dealing with, which this creates this other vicious cycle of lack of empathy going on in the system as well. And I mean, you know, we were talking about, you know, how the whole business mindset that I had, like mine started at a young age, but at the same time, I've had a few questionable, I'll say probably illegal side hustles on the side, you know what I'm saying, that kind of had me in that mentality. Oh, okay, well, you know, I'm trying to get money. Let me go ahead and do this. Oh, I can do this real easy and get that flip. And if we start figuring out, okay, you can, and I can relate to some, you know, I can relate to people that are like, I got to, okay, so just, you know what, this is how you flip this into this type of business, right? You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? So you're thinking of this as this, and you know, you can talk to them in the mindset that they have, because you can relate, right? So like for me, I mean, when I was in, like I said, I hated math. So in 5th grade, we had some test coming up, and everybody had these little calculators, whatever. And I was like, man, I don't have a calculator. I'm gonna go steal one. And so this other kid in the class, he heard me. He comes back. And this is when they first came with these calculators that had, you can put put addresses in and phone numbers in. I was like, yo, that's dope. My parents not gonna give me the money for that. So me and one of my homeboys, we cop a couple from the store, you know, and people was like, oh yeah, let me get one. So we started selling them. So we selling calculators that we jack from the store, like, you know, and we sell them, like, and now at this place, all profit, right? Huge risk, all profit, until one day we sold to the daughter of an officer who was like, oh, where'd you get this from? Luckily, she didn't say anything, but it was like, okay, you know how people like, you know, you see a lot of times people know when to give up. I know when to give up. I saw it enough by the time I was in 5th grade to know, okay, let me pivot. I stopped. I made some changes, whatever, but then I stopped at that point, right? I had a paper route. That, and I think this was the 6th grade. I had a paper route, ran for a summer. I had, long story short, toward the middle, I had kids on the other side of the neighborhood who thought that doing papers was fun. So I would give them half the papers, and then on my half, I would deliver half of them, whatever. I wasn't paying these kids. Then at one point, I got bored, and I'm like, man, I want to play with my friends. I only have to deliver paper one day a week, right? So I would go, I would do that. So then I started dumping the paper, and it's a free paper. Nobody's paying for this paper. So I'm like, I'm on that Tom Sawyer paint the fence thing. They painting the fence. I'm over here chilling. You know what I'm saying? So I'm doing that when really all I had to do was probably pay some kids to do the other half of the neighborhood. I got a business running right then. Except we don't have that full mindset, that full thinking, that training, or that understanding, because we don't see other people doing it. So I ended up doing that. After a while, somebody's complaining about getting a free paper. You can pick this free paper up anywhere. So I'm like, ain't nobody's gonna complain about this. Somebody complained. They called the house. They was like, oh yeah, we're gonna have to let you go. And I was like, that's it. All right, cool. Hung up and went about my business. So I was like, I know this is coming. I'm hungry right now. My parents just made dinner. I'm gonna go eat. And that was the end of that. You know what I'm saying? I used to buy all the snacks. I had a locker full of snacks in high school. I would sell snacks out of my locker and keep my books in all these females' lockers that were like closer to my classes. And like I would just like put them in there, and after a while they got tired of me asking for the combination. They just give me the combination. So that's how I always worked that system. I was like, all right, cool. So my locker, just food and stuff, and I just sell food out of there. You know, I'm like, I'm gonna just make this money real quick, right? I lived overseas in Korea, so I had this black marketing was a thing. So we knew how much money our parents spent on groceries. I would just go out there, man. All right, so boom, I can flip a pack of $20 oxtails for $40. Okay, cool. Let me get about 6 of them, some Hawaiian punch, some spare ribs, and let me go find these different spots that are outside the military base and sell them to these people out here because they paying premium price for this stuff. So it was kind of like that mindset, like, all right, well, in college, I was the dude who, like, if I ain't got it, I got it. CDs, I sold weed. You know, it's like anything anybody did, but you were in college, so it was more of a. Now I ran a credit-based system where I was a creditor and I was a repo man. If you didn't pay me before the end of the semester, I was repoing some stuff in your room. You know, it was kind of like, hey, then it was more than what you owe me because, you know, I would keep it in the book and like, all right, well, you owe me this. And I would remind you at the same time, like, hey, if I ain't got it, I got it. Whatever you need, I got you. And I'm, you know, so I'm making money with that. But I was also wasting that money because I could have put it in a whole lot of other things to save up this money. I had a history teacher in my junior year in high school that taught me about stocks. So I messed with stocks, but I wasn't, but I had kind of got out of it. So, I mean, it was just different things like that I could have invested in and moving forward. And it was just kind of like, you know, so I learned from, you know, that journey that I was on, like, oh yeah, I did this in the past, or things that I've seen other people do, start tweeting there. And you know what, like having multiple streams of income, just going down the entrepreneurship route, that's really more for me than it is for on somebody else's demand schedule all the time without having any sort of say, just because do this because I said so type mentality. And it just kind of like, all right, well, you know, I picked up a few things along the way. So let me go ahead and utilize some of these skills to kind of push some stuff moving forward.
Well, see, if I can kind of bring this all together, I think that's why it really, really matters for any of us to be involved in with our youth, because I think there's so many creative minds from all different backgrounds, right? You and I probably had as a polar opposite of background as we could have, right? But the creativeness in our minds on the hustle or the way that we see things or the way we'll walk around things, if we can get ahead of kids, right? And take them and formulate that into a positive creativity. Some of the kids that I used to acquire things off of as a child or as a young adult were some of the most creative and smart people I know when it came to the business they ran. If we could have targeted that into something more creative or more positive, I probably wouldn't have, you know, 4 high school classmates that died before they hit 21 who were in this journey, right? They probably would have been running businesses right now. But it's one of those things where we have a disconnect, and whether that's the home life, the school life, just our society as a general. I just feel like if we really, really focus on these kids, there's so many talented and creative kids that could be anything if we just took their creativity and pushed it to a constructive way.
Yeah, and that's one of the big things that's lacking. Or you get like you get authority figures that are like, oh yeah, you can't do this, and tell them what they can't do instead of telling them how they can do something, or what is or something else. Oh, this is a better fit for you instead of this because of these reasons, right? And that's one of the reasons now. Like, you know, I don't have any kids. I have 6 godkids. So one of the things that I do with them is, you know, you're going to have to take some financial courses before you graduate high school. You know, you have to take some of these classes. You have to have an understanding, especially of dealing with personal finance, because especially if you go to college, as soon as you get to college, them creditors like, hey, get this credit card. You know,
it's a student card.
And make it look like it's free money, and now you're in debt, right? And now you're falling back into that system where, all right, now I can't create wealth because now I'm in debt and I don't know how to get out of debt, right? So understanding what's good debt versus bad debt is one of those things. And just kind of having that mindset of, all right, I can be a creator. I was talking about the Powernomics book earlier, and it was more so, and one of the things they talked about was stop being so much a consumer all the time and be more of a creator. So you have something to say, hey, if everything in the world changed, right, I still have this because I'm not one of the ones only consuming everything. And so, you know, hey, if they have the thing where they both people know, oh yeah, you did this, you did this, you did this, so you can get on because you know how to make stuff, right? A lot of people are going to be sitting there like, man, I don't know how to do anything but take up space and consume things. And that's one of the things that, you know, you have to have that ability to, at least whether you're actually actively doing it all the time or not, but just knowing, hey, I can be a creator, I can do these other things, I can contribute to my own well-being this way. It goes a long way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think one of the best things you can do to give advice, especially to kids, is to try it. Right. Give it a shot. Right. Whether it's a sport, whether it's a program, whether it's a job, you want to open a lemonade stand, you want to sell comic books, you want to sell cards, you want to make paintings, do music, whatever it is, try it. I think I spoke to a friend of mine, Keon, about this. when it comes to sports related more so, but about kind of those athletes that are one dimensional, right? They are the specialized athletes. They put all their eggs in one basket. And I think that's such a mistake, especially in life as a thought process, is try a bunch of things, right? Like this show, right? For me, I bought the domain for this show in 2012. It took my lazy ass almost 8 years to push the button to do it. But it's like, it's something I knew I wanted to do. I didn't know the format. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but it's something I knew I wanted to have my own show. So how can I do that, right? Was it just going to be on radio? Was it going to be on podcasts, audio only? Well, sitting at home every damn day, I'll do anything to see someone else. So this is going to be it, right? So
right.
But just give yourself a shot, give yourself a shot. And I think what you're talking about with a lot of leaders or, those that are in power, I think you get a lot of people that are still very jealous, right? We've had them, right, as coaches, as educators, as bosses. I'm in a very fortunate situation right now where I work for a few leaders that are constantly meeting with me about my career path and how I can get to the next level. That's why I'm staying where I am. I left jobs because as soon as I had a boss that was, this is exactly where you're going to stay and you're going to do exactly what I said. Well, you know what? I can't do it. Now, I also want to give this. If anyone's listening that's thinking, I'm in a job I don't like or I don't want to do, find something else first. You still got to eat. Don't leap without knowing what's below you, right? Take an analytical leap, a Karl Jackson, analyze it, sit on it, and then make a move. And once you make the move, go 100 miles an hour, but make sure you know what you're doing first.
And that's why I still have my hands in. That's why I still kind of work on the what I call the corporate plantation at this point, because I'm still my Black Beard Brigade is still growing, right? So I have that, I have some equity, I have some real estate stuff going on at the same time, but still, until I get to that point where, I don't have enough automation and mechanisms in place to handle some of that growth, and and my bandwidth is too thin to actually do it. Then I know, okay, now it's time to make that. But until, and I know what my number is to say, hey, I need to have this coming in month to month before to be cool with, to not be dependent on this other one. And then hey, I'll have what I call my FU money. Like, hey, man, like, you know what? I already make this elsewhere anyway. So this is I'm just staying on because it's something else for me to do at this point, right? And understanding that and knowing what your number is, knowing what how much you're spending monthly goes a long way, because hey, I'm putting this much money into this, but how much of this is actually need versus want, right? And separating those two and understanding, okay, like I'm spending this much, but this is how much that I actually only need to get through month to month, and I can put this much away to put into something else, or put into another endeavor, to invest elsewhere, or just to save some money up, and understanding that you have those options. Because the other thing is you have the lifestyle creep where you need to make $100,000 a year and then you're a success. Yeah, that's not the truth. Like, you can be somebody that makes $50,000 a year, have less debt than the person who's making $100,000 a year, and then you're like, oh yeah, well, they're actually struggling, right? The person who's making twice as much is actually struggling because now they have the lifestyle creep and they're in debt. People think that cash is king. For me, cash isn't king. So you have to have assets, right? So your assets actually pay for your debt, right? To create that cash flow, right? And then you have that good debt that actually inquires. So if you have debt in real estate, well, yeah, I have $100,000 property, right? But at the same time, people living in it actually pays that rent. So now the rest is cash flow. But at the same time, the property appraises for probably $150,000, $200,000. So now, so your debt to income ratio, well, not the debt, your asset versus debt ratio is actually better at that point, because that's actually good debt. So people like, cash is king, and worried about, what am I doing with this cash? People have cash sitting in the walls of their house because it's like, oh yeah, I'm like, I don't want to cash out refi, or you have these low interest rate savings accounts that don't do anything for you. You don't get any money off of that. So it's a bad situation to be in unless you actually know how money really works and what you need to do to actually grow that money and make that money actually work for you, instead of just where it's sleep half the time. Your money can work for you 24/7, no matter what system.
Yeah, and it's true, and I feel like that comes down to the education, not necessarily in school, but the thought of going, like, I remember my senior year, we had a teacher actually quit, and our He was dean of students, I think, at that time. Now he's actually the athletic director of the school. But he just took over for a month, right? We had a month left in the school. He wasn't going to teach us anything. He wasn't even a teacher. He was just going to try to make sure we didn't, bust out the windows. And he taught us about real life stuff. He was like, I want to teach you about compound financing, right? I mean, compound interest, right? I'm going to teach you about that. You take a $2,000 credit card and you spend $2,000 on it, and you make the minimum payment. Let me show you how much money you're going to pay in 15 years to pay this thing off. And if you're paying the minimums, you're not going to ever pay it off, right? That's the idea. Right. The idea is to continuously keep you there. Yeah, I mean, and I've been guilty of this myself, right? I've splurged on things that I look back on and I'm like, man, what did I do that for?
Well, yeah,
right?
we all have those moments. I mean, right. it's one of the things. It's kind of like, yeah, I didn't have this before. Let me get this. Or yeah, I have access to this now. So now it's more so of, all right, let me put a mechanism in place to say, all right, as my income increases, because really your actual income is what you have after you pay off your debt. So if you make if your salary is $100,000, that's not actually what you make. What you make is everything you have left. So if you have $80,000 in debt, you really only make $20,000 a year.
Yep.
Right. And it's the same, because it's the same as profit in business. You have to understand that. So if you don't understand that, you kind of like, yeah, like I made it here. You really didn't, because you're struggling at this point, because you don't know how to separate the two out. And that's one of the other reasons we're talking about, like, working with the students is, teaching kids, that lifestyle. Like, because I can guarantee most of the kids I talk to, like, I've been through way more than what you've been through. Like, I've seen, I've seen it all. I've seen, from death to dealing with gangs to, anything else. Like, now I saw a dude, second, third grade kill himself. He was schizophrenic. You know what I'm saying? And I've never talked about that, right? It's right. Just like, but that was like the first exposure I had to them. Like, yo, that's crazy. And just never had a conversation. We just went about it, but then you kind of process things later on and you see other things in life. And it's kind of like, all right, well, I navigated through this. And, we had this thing talking about soldiering on. Really, a lot of times soldiering on doesn't really help, because now you have all this stuff built up inside of you that you don't know how to deal with. So having somebody that you can talk to as far as like the whole lifestyle, understand, like, I can relate to you, this is what I did, helps people open up, because they don't have anybody else to open up to, and they kind of get stuck in that path.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, especially, and not to be sexist, but especially with men. I think it's hard with men to be open about their feelings or things that they've gone through. It's okay to be upset about something. It's okay to not understand something and go seek that understanding, right? Why did this kid feel this way? Okay, this is a disorder and this is this, right? It's nothing none of us could have done, right? Maybe things could have been better, but we don't know. It's not just a random act either, right? These are things we need to look at. And that's why I think, with everything that's going on today, some of the most important things are having empathy, seeking understanding. I talk about this with almost everyone that I talk to. I try my best to be the type of person that seeks to understand. I don't have to agree with you on a topic, but I want to know why you think that way, right? And then I'll compartmentalize it and take it home and think about what that really means. But we just need to do a better job, I think, as in totality of doing that. And I really think it starts with you. So that's why I really want to commend you on that. I really want to say, it's always been impressive to me. The sports stuff, to me, that was easy for me. So I completely understood that. But, with you being involved with the STEM programs and the internships and things like that, I mean, you're changing kids' lives and you need to be commended on it. So, I want you to know that doesn't go unnoticed. We notice what you're doing with these kids, and you make a change in these kids' lives.
No, I appreciate it. One of the biggest turning points for me was in the internship thing was a couple of different incidents where one year I had 18 students come in. We didn't have a place to put any of them. And the VP engineer at the time, he was like, yeah. And I went to him and I was like, man, like we told him we'd take 5. And I was like, yeah, we have like 10 high school ones that signed up. We still said we would take about 5 or 6 of these college students. And he was like, all right. And I was like, but where we gonna put him? He said, I don't want to turn anybody away. And so we started walking around the office like, say, okay, we can put something here. We turned the conference room into an office where we had like 6 or 7 interns in there or whatever, and had it like that. And then, so at the end of that, like, they all thanked me. But then I had one college one who I ended up having under me, and I had to teach him a hard lesson of, you have enough knowledge to do the work. Don't ask me every 5 seconds for confirmation of what you're doing. And so I had to be hard on him. And when I gave him his review at the end, it wasn't the review that he wanted, but it was enough for him to and then he hit me up, and I was like, look, no, I'm not changing it. This is what you need to think about. This is what you need to work on. You need to change it from this point on. And this is what you need to work on, because this is going to hurt you later on. If I don't tell you this now and I just change it because of that, that doesn't work. So he goes on, and then a couple years later, he's working at iHeartRadio, and he hits me up, and he was like, man, I just want to thank you. Like, I appreciate what you did for me at that time, because that that was like a springboard for him. They're like, okay, yeah, I need to make these changes, and I need to learn that, yeah, it's okay to make these decisions. If I mess up, it's okay to mess up as long as I know why I messed up and I learn from these mistakes and then I correct this going forward. But you don't have to ask me every little thing before you do it, because now I'm also do the work myself, right? And to think for yourself. And he didn't really understand, yeah, I can think for myself and get this done, where, we have a lot of these days where it seems like kids are not taught to think for themselves, right? It's kind of like, yeah, like, I'm gonna tell you what needs to be done, this, and this. And they have this closed view of the world where it's these books and what somebody else told me, and that's it. Like, and then you have this limited view where after a while things open up and you're like, oh, this is how it really is. Like, yo, this is crazy. And so it's kind of avoid that, where you kind of get, sink or swim mentality when in the real world, and kind of helping you get there before then.
Yeah, no, it's very true. And it's one of those things that I question on myself as a parent, because it's, you don't want your kid to struggle, right? So you want to do everything you can to help your kid. But when you really look at it, like me, you, anyone that I know that's done well and successful, is they've had to struggle at something. There's been something that they had to struggle with and overcome that helps build the rest of their life. And I think we kind of struggle with that, or I struggle with that sometimes, where I'm like, if my kid's struggling with their shoes, I want to just go run and help. But then I'm like, especially with my wife, she's like, no, sit your ass down, let them figure it out, right? And it's like, yeah, you got to let kids stumble a little bit. But I think also it kind of, full circle to bring it back. It brings it back to the education system too, right? Kids are told, do exactly what I say, don't deviate from the median, and there we go. And again, kids don't problem solve stuff, right? Like, if we went to the field as a kid and the field was locked, we did our problem solving skills to figure out how we could get on the field to go play, right? And then we figured it out. Maybe we learned some life skills in hopping fences, or, wiggling out some locks. We learned some things, right? But those are things that help create that creative bond of not ever seeing a stop sign, just kind of seeing a detour, right? And I think we need to help kids out. But
definitely,
I kind of cut you to the hour, so I do have some other things that I want you to get back to. So, Karl, I really appreciate you coming on. I'd love to do this again. For those that are listening and watching, how do they get in touch with the Black Beard Brigade? What are the websites? What's the link tree? What's the easiest way to kind of follow those?
So yeah, on Instagram, Facebook, and the website is really Black Beard Brigade. So Black Beard Brigade, BRIGADE. And you can get on there, and on Twitter it's BLK Beard Brigade. So you get on there, follow us, hit us up, ask questions, and it's all about really just live good, look good, feel better. Treating the skin, treating the hair, making sure that you have that healthy lifestyle, and go from there. And then on Thursdays, we do Health Tip Thursdays, where we talk about anything from health to mental health, to nutritional health, to financial wealth. It's just kind of, it's all about education for us, and creating that education factor for the community, so they can progress forward, right? So through that, really, it's a percentage of income that we get from that profit that goes back into community programs that we work with, that allows us to do that. And that's one of the other reasons why that company was founded, is because so to keep me from always having to come out of my pocket for everything, it was another way to help me, just fund programs. And when I say fund programs, it's more so of putting money into the program, but also making sure that there's metrics behind, hey, this is how we're going to move forward, and this is the growth that we're going to see from this, as opposed to just tossing money, so it's more of a philanthropic effort instead of donations. Because then you have a lot of these larger companies now that have these initiatives to where, with everything going on, they're like, let's just throw $100 million out at the thing. And to everybody, that sounds great, right? So, like, let's say Apple threw $100 million at an initiative to fund, health in the community, programs for Black people, whatever you want to call it, right? And a lot of this stuff happened after the George Floyd incident, right? It's kind of like, the country reached its breaking point. So somebody with a salary of around like $63,000, to them, that's $26 out of their income that they're putting to a donation, right? So that's the equivalent of that same donation factor from a company that's making that same amount of money. but they're just throwing money at it. They're actually not really solving the problem.
Right.
They're actually just throwing money at the problem and not making sure that there's any metrics behind that to ensure that goes to good use, or to ensure that they're helping push that forward. It's going to say, hey, we did this. Yay, right? And a lot of times they're just now hearing about the program. I'm not saying the programs are bad. They're just not helping the programs progress with the resources that they have going forward, because they're making an assumption that these programs can do it on their own. And so it's just really, really helping with the behind the scenes analysis of that point too, and saying, hey, we're putting money into this, but this is how, you guys can help make this and tweak this, or this is how this is the best use of the time or whatever, or the best use of my time as I'm volunteering at the same time, and kind of go from there. And then from there, I also have Legion of Visionaries, which is also the main part of that does the research to say, hey, this is how we can work with these companies, and kind of go from there and kind of build those out and push that out.
Yeah, well, I'll tag all of them when we post all this, because I do want people to follow it and do want people to watch it. And yeah, I think it's very important that people start to understand, and we need to get more positive people like you, front and center on things that are doing everything that they can see, it can do to be a positive role model for others, and to be involved, not just write a blind check or a blind donation and walk away and think that's going to solve the issue, right? We all need to get involved with these issues. It's the only way they're going to get solved.
Right. And also, I actually have a discount code for all your viewers as well. So it'll be Vinny D. I'll shoot you a link that'll automatically put it in there. It'll be 20% off for anybody who comes through that link. So I'll shoot that over to you, so that they don't have to remember what the thing is, what the code is. They can just click on the link and it'll automatically do that checkout. But I'll also give you the separate code so you can put that on there as well.
Yeah, absolutely happy to do it, man. We'll get it out there. We'll post it. We'll share it to everybody in the world. Thanks for putting it on there. And look, like I said, Karl, I appreciate doing it, and we'll definitely do this again, sometime in the future.
Oh yeah, and I appreciate you having me on, man. It's definitely a whole lot of stuff that we didn't cover. So
we got more to get to for sure. Yeah. Well, look, man, Karl. Yeah, absolutely, man. Have a good one.
You too.